Oh, Paul again pulls off his magic.
He's telling himself, I got to stop this. I'm just embarrassing people.
What a difference a year made for Chris Paul. In summer 2019, the supposedly declining point guard was seen as such a negative value asset that the Rockets had to sweeten the pot by giving up 2 first-round picks and 2 draft pick swaps in a trade with the Thunder for Russell Westbrook's bloated contract. Now, CP3 enters this offseason as the league's preeminent trade target, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand why. But CP3 is no youngster, and he obviously has no interest in joining the likes of Steve Nash, Karl Malone, John Stockton, or Charles Barkley as the greatest players who never won a ring. So where does Paul go from here? The concerns around trading for Paul are his advanced age, he'll turn 36 during the 2020-2021 season, his injury history, and his contract. Between 2016-17 and 2018-19, Paul missed at least 21 games in 3 straight years. However, the 2018-19 season was the only year in which Paul really looked like a player in decline. The season before, his arrival springboarded James Harden's Rockets to 65 wins and a 3-2 lead in the Western Conference Finals over the most talented team ever assembled. And there's no doubt Houston had a legitimate shot at pulling the upset before Paul suffered a hamstring injury at the end of Game 5. And after that aforementioned down season, Paul returned to the All-Star game and All-NBA team for the first time in 4 years, leading the 2019-20 Thunder, who everyone pegged as cellar dwellers, to a 5th place finish. OKC then pushed Harden and Westbrook's Rockets to 7 games in a series that came down to the last shot. Over the last 2 years, Paul's still averaging 16.7 points, 7.4 assists, 4.8 rebounds, and 1.8 steals on 58.8% true shooting, while remaining one of the NBA's top perimeter defenders. His production could taper off slightly, and we'd still be talking about a top 20 star, an elite game manager who possesses one of the league's sharpest minds. Paul looks to exploit any semblance of an advantage that exists every second he's on the court, no matter how much it pisses off opponents or opposing fans.
Chris Paul is pointing at Jordan Bell and saying that he's got his jersey untucked. So he's pointing, you see Chris Paul right here. He's pointing at Jordan Bell, saying he's entering the game with his jersey untucked. So he's making the call. So that's what Minnesota, Jordan Bell's jersey is untucked right here. And that's what Minnesota was called for, delay a game.
That happens more often than not. Sometimes refs just be like, whatever, but that is the rule. You know what I mean? If you check in without your jersey untucked, it's a delay game. Call it what you want to, but...
Did you know that they had already had one earlier?
Yep.
And yes, Paul's been hurt in the past, but he suited up for 70 out of 72 games this season after switching to a healthier plant-based diet.
You're vegan? Congratulations.
Money really shouldn't be an issue for teams kicking around the idea of trading for Paul. Not even his $44 million plus player option for 2021-2022. I understand that pro sports is a business, and just like the real world around us, the NBA and its teams have seen their business take a hit from the global pandemic. But we're also talking about billionaire owners, and teams with a legitimate chance to compete for a championship should be swinging for the fences when the opportunity arises to acquire a player as good as Chris Paul still is. As for that 2021-22 player option, so what? Is there a chance a team like the Bucks, say, could get stuck paying Paul $44.2 million that season if Giannis Antetokounmpo bolts after another unsuccessful run at a title? Sure, but unless Paul's production goes completely into the tank next season, he'd still head into 2021-2022 as an impact player on a massive expiring contract. That's not exactly some untradeable franchise killer of a deal. And remember, nobody is ever truly untradeable. Sorry, Knicks fans, it's just too easy to make references like this. Now, there are some teams who shouldn't be in the CP3 sweepstakes. Still looking at you, Knicks fans. New team president Leon Rose was once Paul's agent. But the Knicks are nowhere near being able to contend for a title in the next 2 seasons while Paul's under contract. So it would be asinine of them to move young talent and future draft assets for a 35-year-old. But it would be so Knicks. The desperate Bucks make a lot of sense. But what a lot of Milwaukee fans seem to be forgetting is that it doesn't look like their team has the type of young talent OKC would be looking for in return for the All-NBA veterans. Ditto for the defending champion Lakers, who otherwise would be a great fit. You try telling LeBron James that you didn't move heaven and earth to give him his best shot at a 5th ring. After giving up the farm to acquire Paul George, do the Clippers have enough left to land the point guard Kawhi Leonard is reportedly seeking? What about a reunion with Doc Rivers in Philadelphia, where Joel Embiid's Sixers desperately need a half-court initiator? And don't rule out teams that already have star guards in place, like the Nuggets, for example, emerging as a dark horse landing spot. As the Thunder and Rockets are already aware, you can succeed with 2-star ball handlers in the backcourt, especially when one of those stars is good enough and smart enough to thrive off the ball like Paul can. On that note, new Rockets GM Rafael Stone should call OKC to see if there's any interest in swapping Westbrook for Paul.
You got joked.
Which brings us to Paul's incumbent team. I don't think the Thunder should be in any rush to move him. Sure, Danilo Gallinari is about to hit free agency, and the team is currently coachless after Billy Donovan walked. So I get the assumption that the Thunder are just a Chris Paul trade away from a full-blown rebuild. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an all-star in the making. Dennis Schroeder improved on both ends under Paul's tutelage last season, and like Steven Adams, still has a year left on his deal. Against Dort is locked up through 2023 on what might already be the most team-friendly contract in basketball. Some will argue the Thunder can't compete in the short term, and should therefore build and plan to peak later. But look around the NBA right now. This is a period of transition before a loaded 2021 free agent class likely resets the league's balance of power and gives rise to at least one superpower. The Thunder are coming off a season in which they played at a 50-win pace, and after trading George and Westbrook, have a plethora of future first-round picks for Sam Presti to play with. In a non-destination market where future success can never be taken for granted, maybe the time is now for the Thunder, who could keep Paul, make a win-now splash, and still have plenty of assets left to build for the Gilgeous-Alexander era later. Plus, as we've said, Paul on an expiring deal would still hold value on the trade market next year. In any event, whether it's another unlikely run in Oklahoma City or as the final piece of a championship puzzle elsewhere, the basketball gods gotta work their magic and give Paul the contender he deserves. The 15-year veteran has had his fair share of ill-timed injuries and postseason meltdowns.
With 17.8 to the hole. Paul had it knocked away by Westbrook. A steal leads to this. Jackson is fouled by Barnes.
But don't for a second fall for the trap CP3's haters will lay for you. The guy is a proven playoff performer.
Green on Paul.
God, he got it! 1 second left. Clippers by 2.
Paul has averaged roughly 21 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals on 58% true shooting over 109 career playoff games across stints in New Orleans, LA, Houston, and OKC, during which time his teams have performed 6.6 points per 100 possessions better with him on the court.
You know, when it gets to clutch time, fourth quarter, some people built for it.
So yes, Chris Paul is 35 years old. He does come with about an $85 million price tag over the next 2 years. And no, he's never led a team to the NBA Finals. And yet, he's absolutely worth trading for if you're a contender. And if those contenders aren't ready to blow Presti and OKC away with an offer fit for the point guard, then Paul's absolutely worth keeping for the Thunder. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.